going to learn about muscle regeneration in shrimps by reading the book The Misadventures of Sebastian the Shrimp, based on a true story by Nick and Mike for short. Here's the cover.
Teacher, what's limb regeneration?
It's when an animal regrows a body part. Okay, so let's get started. Once upon a time, under the sea, there was a shrimp named Sebastian. One day, one of Sebastian's appendages was violently ripped off by the evil sea witch Ursula.
No!
Oh no, what's going to happen to Sebastian?
Let's keep reading to find out. Sebastian was found by two scientists, Nick and Michael. Interested in the evolutionary origins of regeneration and knowing that crustaceans often have the ability to regenerate their limbs, they took him into their lab to study whether he would undergo regeneration, and if so, what the process would be like.
Oh look, it's...
Cool, I was craving for some cajun seafood today. Let's bring him home for dinner.
No way, look at his appendage. Don't crustaceans regenerate their limbs? We should bring him back and see if limb grows back. Cajun seafood can wait until after the limb regenerates.
What's a crustacean?
What did they find?
Crustaceans are a group of animals such as crabs, lobsters, shrimp, and barnacles. So, back to the book. The scientists found that day the wound had already closed. Curious to see if there were any cells dividing, the scientists added EDU, a natural nucleotide that lights up when cells are dividing. They found that 2 to 3 days after the accident, a blastema had formed under the wound. A blastema is a group of proliferating cells. Next, 4 to 6 days after the accident, the scientists were able to see the tip of the newly regenerated limb using the distal DS-RED gene trap, which visualizes the ends of neurons. During the next few days, the scientists noticed that the regenerating limb grew and looked much like a normal limb with a typical segmented pattern. During the next molt, the fully regenerated limb appeared as if by magic, but it wasn't magic, it was science.
Wow!
Sebastian was really tired after having all of his limbs cut off, so the scientists decided to give him a break. However, he was very lonely, all by himself. So the scientists went out to the beach again to find him some new friends. Sebastian was very happy. He had never had so many friends at the same time before. One of his friends was a girl that he liked very much. So they got married and she laid baby eggs.
Aww.
Did they live happy ever after with their kids?
Nope. Nick and Mike realized that they needed Sebastian's help again. But this time they needed his shrimp babies to test whether the stem cells that regenerated the appendage were pluripotent, like in planarians, or linearly restricted, like vertebrates, or even like cnidarians, in which progenitor cells are specialized to different degrees based on species. Nick and Mike had 3 goals: to find out if there are similar types of progenitors across different phyla, whether there are shared regenerative strategies, and which of these strategies is the oldest.
What does pluripotent and linear restricted mean?
Pluripotent means that the cell can make every type of cell in the body, from brain cells to heart cells to stomach cells. Linearly restricted means that it can only make a certain subset of cells in the body, such as red and white blood cells. So back to the story. In order to track which types of cells contribute to limb generation, the scientists stole... I actually have to get a drink of water. Your teaching assistant will come finish up the story.
In order to track which types of cells contribute to the limb regeneration, the scientists borrowed 4,000 embryos from the shrimp couple. They then injected all of these embryos with EGFP. Out of all of the embryos, they only kept the ones where only 1 out of the 8 cells that make up the embryo was labeled. The rest were returned to Sebastian and his wife. These properly labeled embryos grew up with the scientists until they became young adults, at which point the scientists amputated them. and tracked the GFP during regeneration. They found that the progenitor cells were linearly restricted. The EL, ER, and EP blostomere descendants only gave rise to ectodermal cells, like neurons in the epidermis, while the ML, MR, and MAB blostomere descendants only gave rise to mesodermal cells, like muscle. The lineages were also restricted locally. I would explain all of the locations, but I'm sure as that smart preschoolers, you can figure out yourself by interpreting this image. This means that each location has its own pool of progenitor cells instead of a central pool.
So it's important that this was found in shrimps because humans and shrimps share a lot of things in how they regenerate things, right?
That's right! Wow, you're such a smart student.
That's because my mommy and daddy talk about shrimp limb regeneration when they tuck me in at night.
Wow, you poor child. I mean, good for you, good for you.
Wow, that's so cool. I wish I was a shrimp.
I don't, but good for you. Okay, by this time, Sebastian didn't want to be part of this experiment anymore. He had lost too many children, and his legs were sore from being cut off again and again. Nick and Mike understood this, and realized that Sebastian had reached a ripe old age. In his honor, they opened up a seafood shack in his name, and Sebastian was sent to a farm near the shack to live out his days. Or at least a couple of days before they ate him with garlic butters.